If you're in a hard marriage, how do you deal with the hurt? I got that question just recently from a woman who she would say she's in a pretty good marriage. She's a Christian. She has a Christian husband. He's a pastor, and they get along okay. But some of the things he's doing really cause her a lot of pain, and some of the stuff he's done in the past, a lot of pain. And she's just asked me, how do you deal with the hurt? Here's what I told her: 3 things. First, how do you think a football player would answer that question if you asked him about that in the physical sense? He's like, you're going to play football, you're going to get some hard hits, it's going to be painful. How do you deal with the hurt? How do you deal with the pain? You're on your way to the Super Bowl. How do you deal with the pain you're going to experience during that game? Well, he would say, how do I deal with it? I barely notice it. It's such a thrill playing in the Super Bowl, those hits, I barely even notice the pain until the next day. Or to make it a little bit more relatable, how about a woman who's pregnant? Why is it that pregnant women so often look forward to their due date, even though they know that might be the most painful day of her life, and yet she still looks forward to it? Why? Here's why. It's because the joy of the new baby supersedes the pain. She's so sure she's going to be happy on that day. That football player is so sure he's going to be happy in that game that the pain is really just irrelevant because the joy is greater than the pain. So the way you deal with hurt in life and in your marriage and relationships and all kinds of different things is by finding joy so great that it eclipses the pain. Your overall level of happiness in life is not determined by how much pain you have. It's determined by the ratio of your pain to your joy. See, if you barely have any joy, your joy is like a 1 out of 10, then all it takes is a tiny bit of pain, like a 2 or a 3, and it's overwhelming to you and it's crippling. But on the other hand, if you have tons of joy, your joy is a 9, then your pain can crank all the way up to a 7 or 8, and it won't get you down. That ratio is what matters. So how do you deal with, if you can't, now if you can reduce the pain, great, reduce the pain. But if you can't reduce the pain, if you're not in a position to do that, somebody else is in control of that because they're hurting you. What you need to do is just elevate your joy level higher than that pain level. And there's plenty of joy in the Lord to always elevate higher than any pain level. That's the promise God gives us. If you have fellowship with God, you experience His presence, it can produce more joy than any amount of pain. I wrote a whole book about that. It's called Deeper Knowledge of God, and it's a devotional on the attributes of God and how to experience those attributes in a way that can produce that joy. So that's number 1. Number 2, second answer. On the pain side, there is a way you can reduce the amount of pain, even if it's someone else that's inflicting it on you. Actually, you can reduce most of it in many cases. Because when somebody's mistreating you, the natural response is to dwell on that and make the pain 10 times worse because you keep thinking about it, keep dwelling on it. We tend to rub salt in our own wounds. When somebody hurts you, that hurts. It's painful. But then each time you think about it after that, you make that wound go a little bit deeper. You can get to the point where 10% of the pain is from what that person did, and 90% of the pain is from you just thinking about it. Each time you recall it, you stab yourself again. Now, you might be thinking, oh, great, I would love to stop thinking about it. Of course I would like to stop thinking about it, but it's pretty hard to do. I mean, if someone smashes you in the face with a hammer, you can't just put it out of your mind that easy. And that's true. And I'm not asking you to stop thinking about it. I'm only suggesting that you shift your thoughts from that person's role in what's happening to you and God's role in what's happening to you. That's how Joseph in Genesis 50 kept himself from becoming embittered by the mistreatment that he got from his family. He was abused horribly by his family, but he didn't become angry. And when he explained why, they expect him to be angry when they saw him again, and he says, you don't have to worry, I'm not angry. You know why? Because you meant it for evil, God meant it for good. You meant it to harm me, God meant it to help me and to benefit me. That's Genesis 50:20. And that's such an important verse. You say, well, wait a minute. How does that even help? Because, yeah, God meant it for good, but they still meant it for evil. Joseph says that. You meant it for evil. So how does that, why am I not still upset? Well, here's why. Here's why he wasn't still upset. It's because the good that God meant it for mattered more to Joseph than the evil that they intended. They intended evil, that mattered a little bit, but God intended good, and the good that God intended, God's intentions, mattered more to Joseph than their intentions. And when you get to that point, that's when the anxiety goes away and the anger goes away. And joy comes in its place because God is doing something really good, if you believe Genesis 50:20. Because his purposes are always good for you. Good, if you're one of his children. So how do you deal with the hurt when somebody is abusing you? Number one, elevate your joy in the Lord so it eclipses that pain. Number two, reduce the amount of pain by not dwelling on the human aspect of it, but dwelling on God's good purposes. And then number three, and this is another way to elevate your joy, love the person. Love the person. The most important principle for dealing with hurt is to dilute it with a much greater joy. And Jesus said, when you want to find the greatest joy possible, Jesus said in John 15:10, if you obey my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have obeyed the Father's commands and remain in his love. I've told you this, now get this, I've told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. That's a pretty awesome statement, right? Jesus' joy is going to be in you and your joy is going to be complete. And then he said, if you just obey his command, what's his command? Love each other as I have loved you. He says, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this, that he laid down his life for his friends. When you're being hurt, it feels like what would make you happy is for this person to love you instead of hurting you. And when Jesus said, it's actually more blessed to give than to receive, that's hard to believe. Oh, is that ever hard to believe? It just feels like, no, receiving love right now is what I need. I need this person to love me and not hurt me. And that's what would make me happy. And Jesus said, no. I mean, that make you a little bit happy, but the thing that give you the most kind of happiness, the kind of joy I have, Jesus says, is loving them. You loving them. You showing kindness to them. Find a way to love them. And you will have joy that is like Jesus' joy, and it will eclipse all of this pain that you're experiencing. Now, when I say all these three, I don't mean to downplay your pain. I'm not suggesting that any of this is easy. Being abused by someone you love, someone who's supposed to love you, it can be absolutely excruciating. But I am promising that it is possible. And if you do it, the result will be joy.